If you've ever watched those revenge stories where someone gets knocked down and somehow rises back stronger, mine didn't start that way. It didn't start with fire. It started with silence. Silence from the people who were supposed to love me first. I was 17, a senior, and faster than most boys on the track. That race, regionals, was supposed to change everything. There were scouts, there were college reps, and there was me, zoned in, heart pounding like a drumline. But with one wrong step, it all collapsed. The pain hit before I even hit the ground. A sickening snap echoed through the stadium. My leg wasn't just twisted, it was broken, clean through. I don't remember the fall as much as I remember what came next. The cold metal stretcher, the blinking hospital lights, and me asking through tears, "Can someone call my parents?" I expected them to rush through the emergency room doors any second, maybe with worried faces, maybe panicking, maybe even yelling at doctors like in the movies, but no one came. The nurse who held my hand was named Kelsey. She wasn't even old enough to be my mum, but she was the one who stayed, the one who whispered, "You're doing great," as they inserted the rod into my leg. When I finally woke up after surgery, the only thing waiting for me was a voicemail. "Hey, honey," my mum chirped. "We're not going to make it to the hospital. Your sister's college orientation got moved up, and she's nervous. This is a big deal. I'm sure you'll be fine. You've always been strong. Love you." That was it. No flowers. No, "How bad is it?" Not even a picture of our dog. Meanwhile, Instagram told a different story. Photos of Riley beaming on campus with a map in hand. Captions like, "Proud of our girl, next stop, greatness." And me, I was in a hospital bed with a steel rod in my femur and silence where family should have been. That night, something shifted, not just in my leg, but in my chest. Something broke clean through. Have you ever been abandoned when you needed it most? If so, see what I did when I got back up, alone. Recovery was humiliating. The kind of humiliating that doesn't come with a warning. You'd think a broken leg would bring people closer, family especially, but instead it felt like I had been erased. No visits, no FaceTime, no "how's therapy going?" Just silence. And oddly enough, consistent social media updates about how well Riley was adjusting to campus life. While she posed with her new roommate, I was home with an elderly neighbour, Mrs. Dubois, who smelled like lavender and old books. She brought me soup, helped me shuffle to the bathroom, and even used her pension to pay for an in-home therapist when my insurance ran dry. Can you imagine that? A stranger treating you like a daughter while your real parents forget you exist. There was this moment, 3 weeks in, I called my mum, thinking maybe they finally had time. Maybe now she'd say, "We're coming, we'll stay the weekend." My dad picked up instead. "We'll swing by after orientation week wraps. You're okay, right?" There was a silence so loud I thought the call dropped, but it didn't. I just couldn't speak, and he didn't ask again. That was the last time I called them. I started writing. Every day. Not to them, not for anyone else, just for me. I wrote what it felt like to teach yourself to shower while balancing on one leg. I wrote about needing help to open the mailbox, about the shame of limping past classmates when you were once the fastest girl on the field. There was one night, I remember it so clearly, I couldn't sleep. My leg was throbbing, and the pain meds were making me nauseous. I looked at the empty doorway and thought, if I went missing tonight, who would even notice by morning? That thought sat with me like cold water on my chest. And maybe this is a weird thing to ask, but have you ever felt that way? Like if you vanished, the people closest to you wouldn't even flinch? If yes, yeah, I felt that too. Weeks passed. Riley got a post about rushing for sorority. I got a new pair of crutches. They didn't post anything about me, not even a blurry hospital wristband pic. Nothing to say pray for our daughter. Just airbrushed silence. It wasn't just neglect, it was erasure. And when someone erases you, you start to wonder if you were ever real to them in the first place. That question haunted me more than the break, and somehow it hurt more than the surgery. But I wasn't done yet. I was still standing, on one leg maybe, but standing, and I was already learning, if no one's coming to save you, you better figure out how to save yourself. Some people hit rock bottom with a loud crash. Mine was quieter, like the slow closing of a door that never opened again. After that last phone call with my dad, I didn't reach out anymore, not on purpose, not because I was angry, but because I finally understood they weren't coming. At first I tried to convince myself it was timing, bad luck, orientation week, work schedules, traffic. I gave them every excuse I could think of. But weeks passed, then months, and none of those excuses showed up with flowers or a hug. Instead, I watched birthdays pass with no call. Doctor appointments I had to Uber to alone. My first major setback in therapy, I cried in the waiting room by myself. There's a strange loneliness that settles in when you're hurt and no one seems to care. It's not loud. It's the kind of loneliness that makes a familiar house feel foreign. I tried writing letters to them at one point, not to mail, just to get it out. Letters that started with, "Dear Mom and Dad, I don't think you meant to hurt me, but you did." I never showed them those letters because deep down, I didn't want to beg to be seen anymore. My therapist, paid for by Mrs. Dubois, bless her soul, once asked me, "What are you waiting for from them?" I remember staring out the window a long time before I said, "I guess I'm waiting for them to act like I matter." She didn't say anything for a bit. Then she nodded and said, "Maybe it's time you matter to yourself more than you're waiting to matter to them." And that broke something open in me, like a dam giving way. I spent so much of my life trying to be worthy of their love. Straight A's, perfect attendance, quiet, obedient, helpful. But apparently, none of that buys you a seat in a hospital room when you're broken. That's when things started to shift. I became obsessed with understanding the body, recovery, injuries, healing. I started reading articles about fractures, bone growth, the science of mobility. At first, it was just to make sense of what was happening to me, but then it became something more. Knowledge gave me power. It was like reclaiming control over the one thing that had betrayed me, my own body. And for once, I didn't want anyone's praise for it, not even theirs. I didn't want to prove them wrong. I wanted to prove to myself that I wasn't broken beyond repair. And maybe you know that feeling too, when you stop waiting for someone to show up for you, and you decide you'll show up for yourself instead. That's when healing really starts. Not just the kind you can see on an X-ray, but the kind that lets you finally breathe again without needing anyone's permission. Healing wasn't pretty. It didn't come with motivational music or montages of me pushing through pain in dramatic slow-mo. It came with messy mornings, with waking up stiff, still sore, still angry. It came with relearning how to walk while trying not to cry in front of strangers. But slowly, so slowly, I started reclaiming pieces of myself. I got accepted into a local state university with a strong kinesiology program. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't where Riley went, but it was mine. While Riley posted pastel sorority pics, I was learning how muscle fibers heal. While she snapped boomerangs of brunch mimosas, I was working nights at a smoothie bar and limping to 8 a.m. labs. No one posted Proud of Sienna updates, no dorm tour videos. But I had something she didn't. Purpose. It started small. A class project on injury prevention turned into an independent study. Then that study became a full-blown research paper on recovery negligence, and I used my own story as the silent case study. When I turned it in, I almost didn't expect a reaction. But my professor cried. She nominated it for a national undergraduate award. That was the first time I felt truly seen, not for my trauma, but for what I did with it. From there, something inside me clicked. If I could take this thing that nearly shattered me and use it to help others, then maybe it wasn't all just pain. I started volunteering at physical therapy clinics, worked with stroke patients, athletes, even kids with scoliosis. They didn't know my story, but they saw how patient I was, how I noticed when someone needed a break or when silence was heavier than any weight machine. One of the older patients once looked at me and said, "You're not just good at this, you get it." And I did, because I had lived it. I didn't need applause, but I did start keeping every small win like a secret medal. Each one said, "You're not broken anymore," even if I still limped sometimes. When I made the dean's list for the second semester in a row, a cousin mentioned it in the family group chat. That's when my mum finally messaged, "Wow, why didn't you tell us, sweetie?" I just stared at the screen and smiled because I had told them. They just weren't listening back then. I didn't reply with words. I sent a screenshot of the old voicemail, the one about how Riley's orientation was a big deal. They didn't answer after that, and honestly, I didn't care. Because somewhere between the crutches and the case study, I stopped trying to walk back into a house that never opened the door for me. I was building a new home. And this one didn't require permission to walk in. It was a Thursday morning when I saw her name. I was sipping terrible break room coffee, half focused on the stack of incoming job applications for the mobile rehab startup I'd launched with 2 classmates. And there it was, Riley Rowe, same last name, but I thought, no way, must be someone else, right? Then I opened the cover letter. I'm passionate about making recovery accessible in underserved communities. I'm seeking a second chance to do something meaningful. I stared at the screen. It was her, my sister, the golden child who once got a car for making honor roll, the one they abandoned me for in a hospital bed, the one who went silent when I limped through months of therapy alone. And now she was looking for purpose. I didn't reject the application, but I didn't invite her to HQ either. Instead, I forwarded her resume to our most remote mobile unit, the one that travelled to rural towns, spent nights in cheap motels, and worked with patients who couldn't even afford bandages. It was brutal work, but it was honest, and it was where I had started. In the acceptance email, I left no title, no signature, just, "We are currently filling support roles on our mobile outreach team. Let us know if you're available." She accepted within the hour. Weeks passed before I saw her again. We held a quarterly staff meeting. Every department came in. I was standing at the front, clipboard in hand, running through operations updates, when I noticed her. She was sitting in the back, quiet, smaller somehow, not physically, but in presence, like the spotlight had finally burned out. And then our eyes met. It took her a full 5 seconds before her lips parted. "You're the founder?" I didn't blink. "I'm the founder, and I built it after the accident. You remember that, right?" She didn't respond, just stared like she'd swallowed a stone. There was no dramatic showdown, no yelling, no "how could you," because I didn't need to humiliate her. Life already had, but I did want her to know what it felt like to be invisible, to be expected to work, serve, prove your worth, and never once be asked how you were holding up. So I kept her on staff. not out of pity, but because I believe in earned redemption. She started like everyone else, cleaning equipment, logging patient files, being overlooked in the lunchroom, watching the team celebrate my birthday with cake while she stood near the coffee pot, forgotten. One evening, after a long day in the field, we were packing up the van. She sat beside me, wordless, staring at her hands. Then she whispered, "I should have been there when you fell. I'm sorry." I didn't reply, not with words. I reached into my bag and handed her a photo. It was the X-ray of my shattered femur. Taped to it was a note I'd written a long time ago. Sometimes the worst breaks lead to the strongest foundations. She stared at it like it was the first time she'd ever seen me clearly, and maybe, finally, it was. A year later, my company received a government grant, enough to expand our mobile clinics statewide. We were invited to speak on a televised wellness panel. When the cameras rolled, the moderator smiled at me and said, "We're joined today by the founder of a groundbreaking startup in injury recovery, someone who turned being left behind into a legacy." I took a breath, looked into the lights, and spoke. Not about revenge, not about pain, but about dignity, access, and resilience. It was the proudest moment of my life. And that's when I saw them, my parents, in the back of the room, clapping awkwardly. Too late, too little. Their faces wore a kind of hollow pride, like they wanted credit for a story they barely showed up for. But I didn't feel rage, I didn't feel sadness, I just felt done. Because the truth is, I didn't walk again just to return to them. I walked again to move forward, towards something that didn't require me to beg for love. I never sent them the full story. They had chances to be part of it, and they missed them. And now, I no longer needed to be seen by the people who once made me feel invisible. Riley still works with us. We're not close, but we respect each other. She shows up, she tries, and sometimes that's enough. If you've ever felt like you had to earn your place in a family that never clapped for you, if you've ever sat in silence wondering what you did wrong just to be left behind, then maybe you needed this story. Maybe you're not alone. Tell me, have you ever had to build yourself back without the people who should have helped you heal? Let me know in the comments, because if you've lived through that kind of silence, I see you. And trust me, you're not invisible anymore.